just bent my fingernail back. Or maybe I don't need to put background music in this, maybe I could just sing it. Hey everyone, it's Fiona and welcome back to my channel, Krusny Eva channel, and welcome to another monthly reading wrap-up video. I worked my way through 9 books this month. We had a couple of DNFs and then some really highly rated reads and a few in between, so it was a pretty mixed bag. The first one I read was The Dig by Cynan Jones. This is a really short novel set in rural Wales, and it's following a sheep farmer during lambing season who discovers that there is a badger baiter on his land, so someone trying to catch badgers on his land. So he's trying to figure out what's going on with that. He has had something quite significant happen in his personal life, I think. That was the way I understood it. So with all that going on and with it being lambing season, he's a very busy man, and he is, I think, struggling to kind of keep on top of that. I believe it turns into a bit of a mystery, maybe a bit of a crime novel. I don't know because I DNF'd it. This just wasn't for me. I feel I had no understanding of the context of sheep farming or farming in general, badger baiting. I just couldn't get my head around what was going on, and I didn't love the writing. It just wasn't the book for me. So I decided to DNF this. I'm not sure how far I got, you know. But that was book 1, and that was the 1st of September. So then I moved on to The Gracia by Kim Liggett. I pulled my prompt, which was for the month, which was a book with a cover I don't like. I do not like this cover, but I thought the book sounded really good. I think I heard of it from Sarah Caroli talking about it. I loved this book. This is a YA dystopian about, what's her name? Tierney. She lives in a county where the girls are believed to have magic, and obviously, oh my goodness. Sorry about that. She lives in a county where the girls are believed to have magic, and obviously the men don't like that. So every year, all of the 16-year-old girls in the county get sent to the woods where they basically have to try and stick it out. Obviously, some of them end up turning against each other. They have not a lot. In some ways, it's kind of like the Hunger Games. I think I described it as a cross between the Hunger Games and The Handmaid's Tale, because they're just sent out into the woods with basically nothing and they have to try and survive. There's obviously tensions and conflict between the girls there and between people at home. I loved it. I love a story about women and girls coming together to fight for what's right, to fight for their rights, to go up against the patriarchy, and it was just so good. And it was really nice to read this off the back of The Dig, which I read in the same, I was doing like a 24-hour readathon. I was struggling to get through The Dig, and then I picked up this one, and oof, what a breath of fresh air. I loved it. I thought it was excellent, and I'm not sure if I said, but I rated this 4.75 stars. I'm feeling my voice is very croaky, but that's the voice I have today, so there we are. Then I picked back up this book. I actually read How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House a few months ago, maybe? But at the very back there is a short story called Miller, and 317 to 340 will be 23, I think. So this short story is 23 pages long. It was a bit nothingy for me. It was written in the same Barbadian, or is it Bajan, I think, or Bajan dialect that the main novel is, How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House, is written in. And I liked that feature, but I didn't see much point in the story. I think it says that it was first in a magazine, so I guess if you're writing short stories to get your work noticed in magazines, then it makes sense. and then why not just throw it in the back of the book? But I don't really feel I got anything out of reading it. So I guess like a 3-star rating? What did I give this? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a 3. Love that. Then I moved on to When in Rome. This is a romance book about a pop star. She's a singer, right? Amelia Rose is burned out from years of maintaining her public image as pop princess Ray Rose. That's it. And then she basically runs away from that life. She needs a break. She goes to Rome, Kentucky, a small town in Kentucky, where she meets Noah, and I just didn't vibe with these characters. I didn't like them. I felt like they were making so many false assumptions about each other, but also about themselves. Noah in particular. And I did try to keep going with this, but I just got to a point where I was like, I'm just not enjoying it. So I actually DNF'd this one as well at page 204. I think some people would really, really love this book. It just wasn't for me. Are we still filming? I've been having a lot of issues with storage space lately, so I'm on edge that it's just going to cut out at some point. Somewhere at this point, I think I finished my audiobook. I was listening to Matthew Perry's autobiography, Friends, Lovers and the Big Terrible Thing, which I really liked. It was narrated by himself, which I love it when a memoir or autobiography is self-narrated. I think that adds a whole extra element of personality and personalization, and you just get exactly, like, every time you read a book, sometimes I read it and I'm like, oh, I wonder if they meant it in this tone. Where would they have put the emphasis on this word or this sentence? So when someone's self-narrating it, that whole element of uncertainty is removed, I guess, and I just really like it. I am someone who did really enjoy Friends as a teenager. I loved watching that show, and I do think if I watched it for the first time now, I don't think I would like it, because I think a lot, basically most if not all of the humour would be quite outdated. I'm probably quite hurtful to a lot of communities, but it's nostalgic for me, and maybe that makes me a terrible person. But Chandler was always my favourite character as well, so to read his story, it really shined a light on the idea on that we all know but can easily forget, that you really have no idea what's going on in someone's personal life. Like, while he was on stage making us laugh, the whole world laugh, the whole Western world at least, laugh their heads off and just fall in love with this character, he was going through so much off stage and behind the scenes. He seemed like a genuinely nice guy, and I really enjoyed listening to his story, and I gave that one 4 stars. And then I did something which I've been waiting to do for a long time, which was to read the lowest rated and highest rated books on my physical TBR according to Storygraph. I started with the lowest, which was Kismet by Luke Tredgett. This is a book that I got from my A Box of Stories subscription a few years ago. Never heard anyone else talk about it. Actually, I think I might have seen it once on Instagram. Maybe. This was the lowest, like I said, with a rating of 2.88 on Storygraph, so that is pretty low. And to start with, I didn't really feel the same way. I found the writing fine, especially for a debut. I straight away wasn't thinking it was anything hugely amazing, but I was like, well, it's fine, it's alright. And then as the book went on, I did get quite fed up of reading it. So we're following Anna, who, in my opinion, was an extremely unlikable main character and problematic. And she downloads this app called Kismet, which is a dating app which basically uses all of your online cookies and like your phone usage, just device, I guess, usage, cookies, compiles it all together to find your soulmate. So not just from questions that you've been asked where you've kind of put on a front to put across the best version of yourself, but all of your search history, messages, your time you've spent looking at particular articles and whatever you've been doing on your phone, it knows about it, and it's using that to find your soulmate online. Anna was just terrible. Actually, in my notes at one point I wrote, Anna is just like her book. So you can tell I really started to get fed up with this book by the end. She just wasn't a good person. She did have some good ideas. So she had a couple of I think she was a journalist. She had a few entrepreneurial ideas that she just never really pursued. Some of them I read like, okay. Others were actually really good. So for example, her community shed idea, I thought was a really great idea. She basically had this idea for like a library but for tools, because she was saying, look down this street, how many houses on this street have got one random hammer, one random spanner in it because they had to buy it for one thing, and now it's just gathering dust because they don't do a lot of DIY. So what if we had this community shed where people can loan the tools? Then it's way less wasteful. You're not wasting money, resources, space in your house, and it just makes a lot of sense, and I really like that idea. But for me, that was probably the only thing she had going for her. There were a few sex scenes in this book, and I hated the way they were written. I was reading them thinking, you can tell this was written by a man. It was horrible. And in hindsight, maybe he was trying to make bodies, like trying to accurately represent bodies and not make them seem so perfect like they are often portrayed. But in my opinion, he went way too far the other way, and the similes he was using to describe the bodies and the actions, very unpleasant. Oh, she was just so disrespectful and rude to everyone, including herself. She had a lot of issues that she really needed to get sorted out. Yeah. So I gave this one 2 stars and then moved on. I will say, I think I probably might have maybe DNF'd this if I wasn't reading it for that specific video and reason, because I just wasn't enjoying it. I would definitely be unhauling this one. On the flip side of that, we have Against a Loveless World by Susan Abu Hawa. 4.57 stars average rating on Storygraph. That is so high. Oh, what did I rate this? Oh no, I didn't write it down. I didn't rate it 4.57, I know that. All I wrote about this was that there was a quote I really liked on page 301. So I'm going to go to 301 and see if I can figure out what that quote was. I think it's this one. It is not easy for me to speak of those weeks of my life without slipping into cliches, mostly because I don't have the right language. I don't have sufficient words to explain how thoroughly and exquisitely I unravelled in love. What a beautiful sentence. I see why I wrote that down. What is her name? Nar. So this book is following a Palestinian woman called Nar, and the book opens where she is imprisoned in an Israeli prison due to her crimes of terrorism against the Israeli occupation. And then we go back in time to move through all the different places she's been forced to move to and then move out of, because her family over the generations has been forced out of their homes several times by Israel. I think this is a very powerful book, especially going into it after reading Kismet. The writing felt like a breath of fresh air. If someone had given me those 2 books and said read them both, one's the highest rated and one's the lowest rated, no competition, it was obvious that this one was the higher rated one. I thought it was really good. Like I said, I didn't write anything else down, so I'm struggling to tell you what I thought. I think I enjoyed the start more than the end. I think, and I don't know if that's because, like I say, I was happy to be reading a better book. I don't know what it was, but towards the end, I was still enjoying it, but I wasn't as amazed by it. I do think this is a really good book, and if you're interested in historical fiction, I definitely think it's worth picking this up. And likewise, if you're interested in supporting Palestinian authors and reading about Palestinian characters and people, then I definitely think this is a good one to pick up. It's a heartfelt story. It's a really great story about a woman fighting for her freedom, but not just her freedom in that sense of the word, like the external freedom, but like from her own inner turmoil, finding out who she is and doing what she needs to do to provide for herself and her family, conflict with herself about whether she's doing the right thing, and then learning a bit of history along with it. I spoke absolutely horribly about that, but it's a book, good book, you should read it. Can I say the same for The Housemaid? Frida McFadden. The first part one of this book, I thought the writing was so bad. And I was reading it like, but everyone loves this. But the writing is so bad. I don't know why I felt that way, but I really did. And part one is over half of the book, so it's a long time to be feeling that way. I kept going because I imagined that there would be some good reveals and twists, given how popular this book is, and that was a good choice. I do think the reveals and the twists in part 2 of this book and beyond were really good. I will definitely be watching the film when it comes out. But yeah, man, the first part of this, I was like, I don't get it, because you're clearly a very talented and respected author, but I just didn't like it. And it's not my first Frida McFadden either. I've read Never Lie, which I thought was pretty good. I was baffled by it. I didn't like the writing style at all at the beginning. But that brings me so much joy. Yeah, it ended up being a pretty good book. I never rated this one, and I don't know what to give it now in hindsight because it's been a few weeks. I guess maybe a 3.75 if I had to put a number on it, just because I can't remember, so that's kind of a go-to. Yeah, interesting one. Interesting. I suppose I should tell you a little of what it's about. It is about... What is your name? What is her name? Is it Millie? I think it's Millie, and she has got a bit of a past. She needs a job. She's living in her car. So she applies for a job as a cleaner at the Winchester's house, who are a family of 3, very wealthy, with this massive mansion, and they're always very like well put together looking. And there is somewhat of an atmosphere in this house. She's uncomfortable. She's at times fearful, but she needs the job, and she's like, I don't know what else to do. She feels a little bit trapped there, in many more ways than one. Great premise, good ending. Terrible stuff. And I'm sorry for being horrible. Yeah. Okay. And finally, I read this absolutely wonderful YA novel, Holding Up the Universe by Jennifer Niven. So heartwarming. This book is about 2 teenagers, Libby and Jack. Libby is returning to school after a few years off, where she was America's fattest teen. She hasn't been to school for 2 years because she was physically too big to get out of her house. She literally could not go. This is all following something that happened when she was a child. So when she was 10, her mother passed away unexpectedly. She found comfort in food after that. So she's been living with overweight and obesity and grief, trauma, and now she's ready to go back to school. Obviously, kids are brutal, and it goes exactly as you'd expect. They're not nice to her. On the other hand, we have Jack, who is a very popular, charming boy, very attractive, and everyone loves him, but he's also got his own stuff going on. He has a condition called prosopagnosia, which is face blindness. So he can't recognise or remember a face. His own, his family's, his friends, strangers, celebrities, no one's. He cannot recognise anyone's faces. But nobody knows. He's kept it to himself, which is a lot. So we have 2 very, very, very different characters with 2 very different issues and pasts, but they meet and they just connect with one another. I don't want to say anymore, but it was so hopeful and heartwarming and lovely. My initial thoughts, my very first impressions were that there were a lot of characters in those first couple chapters, and I was like, whoa. But I do feel that was realistic of a teenage mind. And another thing is that for me there was maybe a smidge too much focus on sex and relationships and finding the one, but I feel the author really got into a teenage mindset, and I fully believe that they believed what they felt. I believed in their feelings and it felt so real for them. So yeah, for me as an adult, sometimes I was like so set on finding a boyfriend again, but then I think that is realistic of a teenage life. I just thought it was so good. The chapters were super short. It was very fast paced and easy to read. It was just wonderful. And after all they went through, at the end, I felt more positive than anything else, because I felt positive for their futures and their present, as opposed to feeling negative for their past. Because yeah, they've been through a lot, but they are finally starting to come out the other side. And it's just so lovely. This was my September poll winner, so thank you to everyone who voted for this book, because I probably wouldn't have got to it yet otherwise, and I'm so glad I did. And those are all the books that I read in September. I would call it a really good reading month. I can't say October's looking the same. In fact, I realised as I was preparing for this that it is the 16th of October today, and I've only finished one book so far this month. And I found it okay. So yeah, this has been my best reading year ever, but I don't know what the next 2.5 months are going to bring, but that's okay. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Let me know what your favourite book was in September, and I will see you next time. Bye!